Good evening, and welcome very, very much to Conversations, where I'm very pleased to welcome to the program two people who've had a hand in producing a very handsome film called Rajoman Ganhdji. And if I may, I'd like to introduce the guests, get into a conversation, and we're going to be able to show some pieces of that film a little later in the program. But if I may, on my far left is David Channer. We believe David and I may be related sometime back in the past. He's from England, of course, but David Channer, welcome very, very much to Conversations.
Thank you.
And very much to New York City.
Thanks a lot.
And on my immediate left, if I may, is Claire Davis, and she is the director of the program. David was the prime cinematographer and co-producer, and Claire was the director of the film. And Claire, welcome very, very much to Conversations.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Maybe you could share with us a little bit, Claire. We want to talk about the film. That's the primary thing that's involved here. You're more involved with the editing and the filming, and also the distribution of the film and
That's
that sort
right.
of thing. But maybe you could talk a little bit about your role and as far as putting this film together. Your role as a director, you're helping to put pieces together that have been shot by David and others.
That's right. I have worked with a lot of cinematographers and producers, but David is the easiest one to work with I have ever enjoyed working with in all of 20 years or so of doing this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I found that, unlike many cinematographers who just fall in love with every foot of film, everything was everything was up for grabs when it came to David's footage. He was perfectly happy to see anything go, no matter how beautiful. And I was the one that kept saying, "Oh no, we can't possibly cut out this part. This is much too beautiful to lose." Mm-hmm. And so we just came to a meeting of the minds about everything. It was wonderful to work with, and of course we were also very fortunate to have a very excellent BBC editor, Ian Corcoran, working with us, who did the actual cuts, but all the decisions were ours.
Yeah, I see.
We shared the final cut.
We want to make sure we don't lose those outtakes, so we want to save
Exactly.
all those pieces and so forth. But maybe you could share a little bit for us too. Now, the film itself, Rajoman Ganhdji. Maybe you could share a little bit the content of the film, the man. There'll be a number of people who aren't familiar with that.
Well,
maybe talk a little bit about it.
It really began, the film, when he came to speak in Atlanta 4 years ago next month. And a close friend of mine went to this conference and met him and had lunch with him and was very impressed with what he had to say and the way he said it so beautifully. And he came home talking of nothing else but this man, and he kept telling me there has to be a film here and you should be involved in it. Mm-hmm. And so then he met David, and soon I met David, and we've been at it ever since.
I see, yeah.
But we found that he did have so much wonderful content to impart, and also his spirit is so giving and so humble and not at all self-promoting, that we felt that he was someone that needed to be seen and heard and emulated.
Not exactly a New Yorker.
Not at all, not at all.
Okay, yeah. David, you've known Rajoman Ganhdji for a very long period of time. You were born yourself in India. Maybe you could share a little bit the man. He's the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi.
Yes, he's the one of the 11 surviving grandchildren of Mahatma Gandhi. And yes, I was born on the Pakistan-Afghanistan frontier, where my father was retired as a general in the Indian Army, British Indian Army of the Gurkhas. And he was one who fought against Mahatma Gandhi. He arrested those who were causing what he said was civil disturbance against the British Empire in the 30s, and particularly in 1938.
Would this have been George Channer?
This was George Channer.
Yeah, that's right.
And so we have had a long association with India, with the development of independence, and we came to recognize after the end of the Second World War, when my whole family were in the Indian Army, that there was a stage further to be taken in the evolution of our people's relationships.
Yeah, I would have thought, particularly if you came up against the personage of Mahatma Gandhi, much less if one were influenced by the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi,
yes,
which was a little bit different than the British code of military justice and system, right?
Yes, it was indeed, but his magnanimity that the Mahatma had really touched the heart, and we got to know the family, and I have known Rajoman Ganhdji many years, and felt that he was finding his way to express his deepest convictions for his own country and for the world, and to find the encouragement here in New York that we could make a film, and their trust in me to do it, knowing him, and our trust in him as a man who would never deviate, that he has his politics and his principles, and the past and the present are absolutely one for him.
Yes, I see. I wonder if we could go back and pick up this, your own perhaps personal background and so forth, but your father and yourselves had become involved or in touch and influenced by the Mahatma, huh? And you are yourself, if I may, involved with a movement that had been started by Frank Bookman.
Yes.
And so maybe you could talk a little bit about that, if you could. It's relevant to the film.
Yes.
Because Rajoman himself is involved with the same organization. Huh?
Yes, it has influenced his life strongly, as he found it very much in line with the views and principles of his grandfather.
Yes.
But what influenced us was that the Mahatma actually sent a representative north to the frontier to find what it was that there was some changed attitude in two Britishers there, the brigade commander, my father, and the government officer, another British civil servant. And when he returned back down, he reported to Mahatma Gandhi that the greatest thing that he has seen coming out of the West is this spirit of a moral and spiritual rearmament, it was called, or change in British. And so it was
in some of the British.
In some of the British, only a few.
Yes, yes, I understand. Yes.
Only a few. In fact, my father's attitude, now you mention it, wasn't altogether approved of by the then governor of the frontier.
Have thought. Right.
Because he was fraternizing a bit too much with the locals.
Right.
And he lost a year's promotion because of that.
I would have thought, yeah.
So, but he managed to regain it. But you do have to, if you stand for something you believe in, you may have to suffer criticism. You may get praise from one side or criticism from another, and we have certainly had that.
But as the Mahatma was interested in the independence of India and for broader social justice in a broad general moral sense, the world cries out for that now, and in a very real sense, Rajoman represents that moral force.
He does, and he is carrying that forward. And of course, the Mahatma has been respected for his stand. There's even a statue here in Union Square.
Oh, yes.
And the British and many in the world now recognize that what he stood for is something that we must again keep recapturing. But coming back to just a word on Frank Bookman, because he is not a well-known American, but he was a person who wanted to encourage the best in others and not make a great career for himself. But I believe he influenced, has made a great influence. And the thing that he always had a phrase that managed to draw out the best in others. And he used to say in those 38, and my father remembers it, every home must be a fort. Now, if you say that to a general who's lived his life in forts along the frontier, he knows what that means.
Yes.
But he also means that the families must stay together. And Bookman was foreseeing that there would be a breakup of family life, but the nations need the fort of family life, where families live together. And that is the heart of a nation.
Yeah, that is true. There are many problems, moral, political, economic, an array of problems that confront us all collectively at this very challenging time in the broader evolution of human affairs and so forth. And we need moral force to which we can repair to gain a sense of reality and a sense of navigation as we go through this. We need it ever more, it seems to me, as we move increasingly into a dehumanizing kind of social contract that we seem to have developed. And we want to come back to that, but we do want to talk, if we could, thank you, we want to come back to your role here, Claire. Claire, you're also involved, if we could, because we've got this beautiful film, and we're going to show some pieces from it and so forth, but you're also involved with, is it called the Video and Film Council?
New York Film Video Council.
Maybe we want to talk a little bit about the idea of how this is an independently produced venture and so forth.
That's right.
And let's talk about some of the role of the council and some of the importance of independent and new artistic and documentary expression. It's a work.
Well, we have a couple of hundred members of people in all areas of film and video work, and everything from animators to editors and lots of independent cinematographers and directors and producers. And we meet at least once a month and sometimes more, and support each other's work. Many of them will be there tomorrow night at the museum at our showing, of course.
We might as well date this, and this is May 15 that we're taping this. It'll be shown later, than this date.
Sure.
But tomorrow on May 16th at the Museum of Modern Art.
That's
in New
right,
York,
in the New
the
York.
film is going to be, in a sense, premiered. Yeah?
That's right. It's our American premiere. It's in the documentary series called What's Happening, which is chosen actually by Bill Sloan, one of our former presidents of the New York Film Video Council, one of my predecessors. And so he does a very interesting array of all sorts of independent documentaries each year.
Yeah.
And we were lucky enough to be chosen about 6 months ago, so
well,
we've
congratulations to all
to
involved with the film. I mean, that's fine.
Thank you.
And it has been shown in Britain now, and it has. When did you, if I may, when did you finish the film physically? This being May '91.
We finished it at the end of August last year.
I see. The final. You don't put the final period on a film, do you? What do you put the final? I'm not sure. Too black. Huh?
That's right. And then the first place that it was shown really was in Switzerland at the Neon International Film Festival, which is the top in documentary festivals in Europe. So we were very fortunate to be chosen for that festival, and we received 3 excellent reviews.
Good.
In lots of different Swiss newspapers.
Yeah.
And we were very happy to be there and get to know lots of the other filmmakers and the people who are involved in that festival each year.
It's likely to be a little bit of an aside now, or by the time this is aired, I'm afraid, but it's also being shown here on the Great White Way in Broadway, right?
That's right.
The clips of the film.
In
that
the
they're putting
Sony
on
Jumbotron.
Yeah, right.
For twice an hour for 3 days and 3 nights. So it's exciting to see a piece of our film.
People are going to be favored with some of that handsome cinematography. that David
That's
was involved,
right.
and it is handsome indeed. I mean, it's a really very, very beautiful film. It's a film that both has a great deal of message in terms of the political stance and the moral stance of this man, Rajoman Ganhdji. And it's also, if I may say so, David, an extremely handsome film. The cinematography and the quality of photography that's involved is of a very, very high nature. Indeed, I congratulate you on that.
Oh, I think David's cinematography is just phenomenal. I could think he stacks up against any cinematographer in the world and comes off very, very well.
Yeah, and you've been involved with a number of. You've been doing this for quite a while, then, right?
Yes, I've been in
still photography as well, right?
Yes, still photography. Yes. I guess I inherit that a bit from my mother, because in the old days in India, when the soldiers were soldiering,
yes,
the ladies didn't have much housework to do. They were painting the scenery, and she did marvelous paintings of India. So my cinematography combines the action of my father and the art of my mother.
All right. Well, that's a good perhaps combination.
Well, I find that the best cinematographers really have come from still photography
Is
first.
that right? Is that true?
Absolutely. I've seen 3 or 4 of them that were notable in this respect. I mean, they've learned how to frame a beautiful shot long before they took to motion pictures.
It's important, isn't it?
Oh,
As
yes.
we begin to look ahead, I mean, just as in this society and everywhere around the world, for that matter, but the young people coming up, we're coming into a world where there are increasingly these kind of things. I can remember my grandfather having the magic lantern, and it was a great event. We would show these they had great things we had to do. It was very complex to set and so forth. But now we're coming into where with these video processes and with other audio-visual processes, which are becoming ubiquitous almost into the society.
That's right.
The young people are growing up with computers, and with these technologies, it's important that the skills of cinematography, the skills of being able to utilize and appreciate these kind of other ways of communication other than print, important of course as that is, it should be more appreciated. I suppose the people in the council would agree with that.
Oh,
the
definitely.
educational importance of all of this kind of particularly independent and meaningful work is of the highest order.
Oh, absolutely true. We come from the film emphasis largely, but our most recent meeting was at the Educational Video Center on 13th, where young people, high school folks, are taught the real basics of video, and they did a beautiful job on some of these and films that they showed at our recent meeting. The next one will be a very long-term filmmaker who has done one called To Heck with Hollywood, and it received a wonderful review in Variety a couple of weeks ago, and so our next program will be that.
To Heck with Hollywood.
Yes, that's what
very
it
good.
says,
Very
believe
nice,
it or
very
not.
nice. I like that. You know, that's
You know, all of us labor away, and we think that
Yeah.
we're going to have to make some deals with Hollywood, but more and more independent filmmakers are getting their work out there and getting it seen, perhaps as a result of the big Civil War series, thanks to Ken Burns.
Well, wasn't it marvelous that he did
Yes.
that? Yeah, there was a,
I think documentary makers and independent filmmakers are really coming into their own.
yeah, well, they
It's
are.
a whole new ball game for
Yeah,
us this year.
well, they are with the increased fiber optics and the channel
Yes.
capacity and cable and the ability to have something other than just straight commercially, you know, glitzy kind of programming of content, meat, substance, and so forth ought to be and is increasingly becoming part of the menu that's available to us, and well, it
Yes.
should. And it's important to teach and to encourage these kind of particularly independent filmmakers in these skills, and so you had the work of the consul, and you've been involved with that over the
I
over
find
the years. If I may,
Yeah,
this
sure.
film, as well as others that you've been involved with, would find a role in terms of university or
yes,
educational institutions.
we have a very good distributor, Filmmakers Library, who gets around to every college and university,
Good.
not only throughout this country, but also Australia and Canada and so forth. So it will be widely distributed there. But in your speaking about values and in Rajoman's case, it's interesting to us that, very much to our surprise, the National Council of Churches and the Friendship Press just fell in love with the film when I showed it at a meeting
Marvelous.
in September, and so they're distributing it to churches all over the country,
Yeah.
and as part of an emphasis called Living Values, Changing Times.
All right.
Because they like this man's values so much that they feel that it needs to reach a much wider audience
Absolutely.
than
I
just
can-
universities and libraries and places that our film would
I
ordinarily
think it should
reach.
be on a big screen up over Broadway. But no, it is true fact that it should be reaching more, and we're going to try and see if we can help in gaining distribution for it and so on. And
Right.
it is true then, David, too, and we do want to show the people in the audience some pieces of it. But it is true that man has a message. He is a spiritual, moral force within India, and maybe you could share that. Your film starts with him talking about the nature of politics, and he also, you mentioned religious, he himself is a Hindu, but he's addressed the terrible clashes that exist between the Hindu and Muslim peoples there, and also the issue of the untouchables and some of these other nagging problems that poverty that exists there. But he is a moral force, and
He is a moral force because I think he takes time to practice that within his own life. You know, he's a person who believes in the conscience. He wants to hear his conscience speak, the inner voice,
The inner
you might
voice
say.
that Mr.
He
Gandhi.
calls the inner voice. And the ethical values, to practice those daily, in the smallest terms, with his wife, with his children, with his relationships. In the parliament, he's a member of the upper house of India's parliament, but right now, as we speak, he is standing for election to the lower house from a city in Gujarat, a city where his grandfather was born.
I see.
And then he's an author and a journalist. He's studied aspects of Indian history, and I wanted to just point out
Yes,
this.
please.
This
If you could hold it, or maybe
just recently now he is.
if you wanna hold-
he
give him
is,
a chance to focus in on it.
He's
Yeah.
written a book on the history of his grandfather's relationship with Nehru and the first Home Minister of India, Patel. And this has been widely acclaimed
Yeah.
in India, and I think he is a man who really understands deeply the nature of his people and the history of the many ethnic groups, religions that make up India.
Yes, and there are many indeed, and it's a very and you with experience 20-odd years of experience?
25 years,
25
I guess
years.
I've spent there,
Uh-huh.
and of course it is the second most populous nation in the world.
That's right, and there's great problem there.
There is a great problem.
We mentioned the inter-religious strife that's been so much a part of the modern history of that.
Yes,
that
but I would like to say
but
also...
there's a great resilience.
There's a great resilience.
Yeah,
there's a great humor.
Uh-huh.
There's great entrepreneurial skills.
Interesting.
And there's elections now, but one feels that maybe in 4 years' time, the political parties will stabilize. That the people have had experience of democracy. They understand elections. Being maybe too many elections, people would say right now, but it is giving them experience in understanding their leaders, understanding the crooks that they don't want, and the men of integrity that they do want.
They have the same problem that much of the world has.
I guess they do.
We have very often, in many cases, leaderships around the world have, for whatever reason, had a difficult time serving the majority of the vast majority of populations around the world. If you understand what I'm saying.
Sure.
Yeah.
He would call attention to the inequities that do exist, and probably get some difficulty with some of the quote-unquote establishment forces of India, just as people who do it here or in Britain might well get the same kind of reaction. Huh?
And
yes, I think he is a radical type of person who does want to shift the establishment and the known way of doing things in India into a new dimension. So he will have radical ideas and radical policies, and which he lives himself, not just theorizing about.
That's right, yeah. And he has a certain kind of ability, a charisma. I don't know if that's the term, is overworked, but he has it's something more than just charisma. He has a real inner quality of moral, I don't know, that it finds attraction to the people there. And for this reason, he's an important potential political force in shaping the politics of South Asia. Yeah.
I think it speaks to a much wider audience than anyone had ever realized. The film has been shown in Russia. We've had a lot of interest from people in Sweden and Holland and other television markets, just because his message and the ideas are so adaptable to every different situation.
Well, if ever we've had, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Well, I just wanted to mention it was shown at Cannes last week at MIP, our worldwide television distributor, CTVC, felt that it would have great interest for people there, and apparently it has.
Yeah, I wish they had a little better weather than that.
Yeah.
Bad weather this year, and it wasn't so happy as it has been on some other occasions. Well, we want to go to a clip, and I just want to say, Claire, that we're going to have another guest come and join us, and so forth. So I wanted to thank you, Claire, very much for participating in this segment of the program. Congratulations on all your work involved with the film, and on your long work, and we look forward to being in a continuing relationship with you.
Good. Thank you for inviting me.
And we're going to go now then to a clip of the film. Maybe we can let David sort of introduce us to that. And if you would, I think maybe if we could, I think it would be good if we could, at the beginning here, show that initial statement where he does talk about the crooks and so forth at the beginning of the film. But we're going to show that. And again, the film overall is about 40 minutes long. We're just going to show a few minutes of it. But I think it's important to try and get both the political message of the man as well as some of the ambiance and feeling for the country. Huh?
Well, he did say his grandfather never went into politics. He hoped that political parties could be disbanded on independence. So the first question we asked Rajoman was, why did you go into politics?
All right, and so then we'll go to the film now that he will be answering that question. We'll show some other parts of this very handsome film, Rajoman, and we'll be coming back with Alan Channer, who was also involved with the film. It was David's son who was also involved with the film momentarily, so please stay tuned. We'll be coming back for that, but we'll run that tape now. If we'd set it up in the studio, please, we'll run the tape now. Rajoman Ganhdji, directed by Claire Davis, and cinematography and co-producer David Channer. We could run that clip now then, please. Thank you.
Rajoman Ganhdji, a man of vision and purpose. The audience is the largest democracy in the world. Largely illiterate, India's millions nonetheless know the power of their vote. and they listen before they cast it.
जब हम चले जाएंगे तो आप लोगों के बीच में फूट होगी, आप लोगों में भ्रष्टाचार आएगा, फिर आप कहेंगे कि हमने गलती की कि हमने आजादी की मांग की.
I have entered the political life of India because I do find that it has become normal to believe that politics is only the life or the vocation of crooks and criminals, gangsters, and the corrupt. And I think that is a situation that one just cannot tolerate. I'm not saying that everybody in politics is like that, but that is the notion.
The concept of a clean, strong, and united India has been Rajoman Ganhdji's goal for nearly 3 decades. A grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, he is unafraid to speak out, yet never tires of listening and seeking to understand another's problems.
Politics is not the only platform from where you can do something useful, but it is often taken as the pulpit, the stage. It conveys a statement, a message all the time to the general public. So what happens on the political platform is crucially important.
Rajoman Ganhdji is an author and journalist, a background that stands him in good stead as a member of the Rajya Sabha, the upper house of India's parliament. His home is in New Delhi, where he lives with his wife Usha and their 2 children. It is the capital of a vast and diverse country that is the home of 850 million people.
Crazy dream, but I want to hold on to the dream. I'd like to see a beautiful India, a clean India, ethically, morally, and also for the eyes. And of course I want to see the hunger end, and the thirst end, and the terrible housing of our millions of people end, the kind of homes in which they live, pavements where they live. One of the things where I feel we Indians are just remarkable is our capacity to adjust to hardship and to suffering. And in a strange way, the poorer an Indian is, the more he has suffered, the quicker he is to make room for somebody else. I think an Indian has been trained to overcome suffering and hardship. And this is something different from a fatalism which we also have. I think it will be wrong to regard this adaptability of the average Indian as some kind of acceptance of a fate. But what I'm referring to is a great positive quality. Often I feel very frustrated. Our problems are just absolutely enormous. I'd like to see it end to our divisions, you know, the fights we have. We have so many groups. We divide by community, by religion, by ethnicity, by language, by caste, which is a very unique Indian phenomenon. That must end. And of course, we have a very strong, cruel streak in our character. We are basically a violent people, I'm afraid. I know this in myself. I know the temper that I can have. I know the violence to which I'm tempted with people I love. And I do know from the history of my country of the very great strand of violence in our makeup. I think unless human nature can be modified on an immense scale, these problems are not going to be solved.
Gandhi championed listening to the still small voice within. Can listening to the inner voice really make a significant change?
Although it is true that Gandhi spoke about the inner voice, it is equally true that the vast majority of those who supported him wanted to listen to Gandhi's voice, not to the inner voice. I think the distinctive thing about what we are trying to say now is that, yes, Gandhi was wonderful, was amazing, but we're not asking Indians to now follow Gandhi. We're not asking Indians to follow any great human being. We're asking every Indian now to turn the searchlight inwards, and that the inner voice might speak to each person and might lead them along the way, might show them where they need to change. We did ourselves find that so many people were searching, were ready to scrutinize themselves ruthlessly, and yet also find a power to deal with their very great selfishness. You know, to get a diagnosis about how horrible things are is necessary, but if it stops there, and if we don't find a solution, if we don't have the confidence that we can change, or our neighbors can change, or our neighborhood can change, the diagnosis may make us even more selfish than we are.
In the eyes of some people, Gandhi and King both have failed. How would you evaluate their programs and their successes?
When we say that Gandhi and King have failed, we really are implying that they should have solved all our problems without our aid. They should have solved problems once and for all. It's really a reflection of colossal irresponsibility on our part. Why should men who lived several decades ago have solved problems enabling us all to live comfortably without need for exertions or for change in our own lives? Yes, it is absolutely true that the examples of Gandhi and King have not been followed by as many people as should have followed them. But had Gandhi and King not lived, our planet would have been so much worse. Because they lived, and because they both warred against evil outside and evil inside, they have left inspiring, moving examples. But I'm not here to say how wonderful Gandhi and King were. I'm definitely here to say that those of us who knew about them and who have not done what we should need to be ashamed. I'm also here to say that those of us who knew about them and who saw how their dedication to the deepest truth they knew, how it did transform some situations for some time, should give us the encouragement to battle where we are. Okay.
आप तो बहुत बढ़िया तकरीर देती हैं बहन। अच्छी तरह दिया आपने।
that's beautiful. That's a beautiful piece, and we were able to bring up some of the not only the message of the man, but also some of the beauty. And congratulations, David Channer, on the cinematography. Some of those pieces were beautiful, and we may now just say we've been joined by another member of the Channer clan or group or family in England, and that being Alan Channer. And Dr. Alan Channer, welcome very much to the program.
Thanks a lot.
And we want to talk. He's just taken his doctorate in ecology and in working with microbiology or
Yes,
ecological studies.
Yes.
In Africa. But you've been involved. Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
And you were involved in terms of conceptualization and part of the script and so forth of the film?
Yeah, you know, my dad here, he thinks mainly in terms of pictures. He's a picture man.
Yes.
And he came back from India with miles and miles of pictures, but also miles and miles of concepts by Rajoman Ganhdji, who's a very intelligent and interesting guy who's doing a lot of thinking for his country. And Dad was a bit swamped by that at that stage. And well, a son doesn't necessarily do what his father does all the time. In fact,
is that
he
a
may
true fact?
do quite the opposite. And in fact, I'd just come back from Africa, but I found that what this guy Rajoman was saying was so interesting that I really wanted to discuss it with him.
Yeah.
So we found ourselves going to a remote cottage in Wales with all the rushes on a video and all what Rajoman had said. We were pasting it up on the wall, trying to say, now, what is he saying there? What's he saying there?
How much footage did you have in time, as it were? Do you have an idea of how much there was in?
Yes, we had about 15 hours.
I see, okay. Down to 40, it's going to get down. Minutes, yes, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
And at that stage, of course, Clair was here in the States.
Yeah.
So we did a bit of thinking on it, looking for the thread. What's the, you know, what links all these things that Rajoman was saying.
That's right. It's hard to put that together into a comprehensive...
But I found it perhaps focused on, he said, let's turn the searchlight inwards and see where these problems that are out there in the world may be starting from within us. And as a guy who just come back from Africa, where, you know, you may hear on the media now that there are 27 million people at risk from famine.
Absolutely awful.
But I've been working with African farmers, and I know that they're often very capable at producing food. I mean, that's not a problem with them. The problem is really in the political thing.
Yeah.
It's when there are civil wars. In the country I was in, there were 1 million refugees in Malawi, come from Mozambique. Malawi has got much less land than Mozambique, but the starvation is in Mozambique because of the civil war.
Yeah.
So those are human problems.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
And to find this philosophy coming out of a developing country, where a guy is saying, you know, let's look at these things in ourselves, where he was paying back money to a bus company for having, you know, cheated on the fares.
Well, he had done that in a kind of, he called that socialism, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And that was his
A
platform.
kickback from the conductor or something, right, was it? Yeah.
He was then going into politics, having made that start, and bringing the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi, which was such an effective one, and speaking to the whole world. You know, I found this really tremendously interesting.
Yeah, and you could bring on that, focus on that thing. Was it Mahatma Gandhi who had said, I recognize only one tyranny, the quiet voice inside, or something of that sort? That was one of his things. And it's the question of trying to bring into focus the moral message that he's trying to communicate. Yeah. He also, if I may, Rajoman was also influenced by having early contact when he was a journalist student in, was it in Edinburgh?
Yes.
By being in communication with some of the people who were in touch with Frank Buckman, no? Am I not correct in that?
That's true. His parents, his father was editor of the Hindustan Times.
All right.
Like many from India, want their young people educated in the West, but they're also particular about where they will live in the West when getting their education, or they may just imbibe the wrong ideas. So he did stay with a family who practiced the idea of listening to the inner voice, ethical and moral principles during the day, and this strengthened in Rajoman the ideas that he had already imbibed from his grandfather, and made him realize that these were reality. These were needed both in East and West.
I wonder if maybe you could share with us a little of your own sense of that, maybe the wisdom of others who were in communication with maybe the first expressions of Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy in a world that is seen by many in hard, cold, realpolitik, realistic terms, that a man who comes with a moral message that is not heavily armored with tanks and the other kinds of you know, expressions of military or political power in that naked sense, that such a man or such a message can be effective realistically in being able to instill in people the idea of change, and then actually the larger step perhaps is actually bringing about major change within a political context which is so mired perhaps or so imbued with the sense of politics and power that is all that's of matter. Do you understand what I mean? Many people are looking for that. Many people perhaps feel powerless to be able to change in a major way the world from a course of perhaps impending ecological or other kind of disaster they could see if we go along. But this moral imperative, there's a moral imperative at a species-wide level almost, that we begin to find some alternative philosophies. And Mahatma Gandhi and now his grandson and the Frank Buckman, some of the others, these kind of are places from which we might repair to find some of that that thought or that leadership in a philosophical sense that is needed. We might well to be looking to that rather than to some of our traditional sources of military and industrial power, don't you think?
Yeah, I do, and I'd like Alan to pick up this thought, but just to say in that, I had a couple of friends in Moscow only a few months ago who were there, invited as people from moral rearmament, and they were received by the Vice President of Foreign Affairs in the Presidium, and in their discussions he said, I see in moral rearmament a continuation of what Tolstoy and Mahatma Gandhi stood for.
I see.
And this is what the world needs. What would you say to that, Alan?
Well, I think you do raise a very, important question. Basically, there are a lot of problems, and they are very difficult to deal with. Mahatma Gandhi himself died, was shot because he was trying to tackle the problem of Hindu-Muslim division in his own country.
Horrible as it was, yeah.
But if we look and think, well, what an influence Mahatma Gandhi did have, and the fact that the British did leave India, quit on a non-violent basis.
Whereas when he first might have brought up the idea, people would have just said, that's hopelessly naive. They might have, yes. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So, and this fellow was not someone dressing up in a sort of fancy way or in his own life. He was a very simple man. And yet he, perhaps it's because of his faith, his faith in God is so strong and becomes so central that when people see him and see that faith coming out of him, they can't help but being affected.
Yeah, right.
And so if more of us are affected in that way and find the source of hope in our own lives, then we can, it could catch on and situations could become transformed.
Yeah,
it's going to be difficult.
The interesting fact was when Mahatma Gandhi first came to Britain, he was coming to Britain. He was sitting in India in his loincloth.
Yes.
And the British official came to him and said, now when you go to Britain and you meet the king, how will you dress? Mahatma Gandhi said, I'll dress just as I am.
Yes, right.
So that he said, he said, it would be disrespectful of me to dress in any other way. To be as I am is my greatest respect.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And so he turned upside down the kind of thinking, because we thought it would be respectful to wear a tuxedo.
Yeah, that's right.
But he said it would be disrespectful of me to be something that I'm not.
Might be breaking faith with a lot of people back home too, in a very real sense, because he was also in touch with the you have this awful, it's from my perspective, caste tradition with untouchable people, and he would be in touch with the, as it were, the untouchables of the world, so the lesser peoples, the lesser advantaged peoples of the world. And if ever there was a crying moral need for there to be some recognition and a political system that addresses the lesser advantaged peoples of the world, it's now. Don't you think so, Alan? I mean, it doesn't seem that way to me.
I think it's a great lesson for the whole world that the most simple way of living can be the most spiritual and the most interesting. And if that really started to catch on, then some of the ecological problems in the world today, might recede. You don't get most satisfaction from chasing wealth. You can, in fact, get it from losing wealth, from being, living a simple life.
Yeah, right. No, it's quite true. It's quite true. And we can learn from peoples that we might, in our arrogance, call simple.
Yeah.
but they're in touch with these natural rhythms, and so we can learn from some of these people lessons that are of importance to us. We can't throw the baby out with it. We can't throw the technology out.
No.
We've inherited this historically inherited institutions, and so we have to deal with these historical institutions. But transformation and change is something that has really got an imperative about it.
Could I say I found it very relevant to my work in Africa, where we do, coming from the West, have a tremendously much more sort of advanced technology.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't make us think that we're somehow superior or better, and that just because we're giving, that we're somehow the great people and they're just the receivers. You know, when you practice or apply Gandhi's philosophy in that situation, you find yourself on a totally equal level, and it's the heart that's important. And in fact, you can find yourself deficient, and the African who has a warmer heart, a bigger spirit, is more caring, who gives you, you know, shares his food with you when he's hardly got any, in the first place.
He's crazy.
Exactly.
He's crazy. No, I'm joking in terms of a New Yorker's response to how anybody could survive. Yeah, right.
And yet, that's the axis of our relationship. One can, you know, be humble to oneself.
Yeah.
This and that is real life. You know, you find it there, and it's very moving.
Yeah, and where we can find that, well, that he was influenced by, or let's say, Martin King was influenced by him in terms of the civil rights struggle here in the United States, and again tried to maintain this passive, this non-violent reaction to the inequities that exist. That's an important strain in terms of Rajoman Ganhdji's philosophy too, and trying to pick up on the threads of that, right?
Yes, the Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi never met in actual fact, but Martin Luther King has hanging in his dining room above the family dining table a picture of Mahatma Gandhi, and he did recognize him in him a man with a spiritual force that could be applicable to the nation. Yeah, well, no, so that was an approach. I wonder, all of the difficulties, we have an election coming. He's actually running for, maybe you could set fill us in a little bit on some of the realities of what's going on in India now in 1991. 2 years ago there was an election because the Congress government under Rajiv Gandhi, who was Prime Minister then, came to an end. And it was at that point that Rajoman decided to go into politics, and you will have heard about his convictions for that in our film. But he stood against Rajiv Gandhi, actually. But he decided, not in the campaign will my party or my co-workers say anything against Rajiv Gandhi personally or his family. There will be no attacks in any way on that. But he did clarify that he himself is the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, that Rajiv Gandhi is the son of Indira Gandhi, but is no relation whatever to Mahatma Gandhi, even though the names are spelt the same. Yes. They actually changed the spelling of Indira Gandhi's name. She married a Parsi gentleman, and the name was spelt differently. It was Gandhi, but spelt differently. I see. I didn't understand. And they changed the name to the way the Mahatma spelt it. So that, of course, the average villager throughout India thought that she was related to or the daughter of Mahatma Gandhi. Now, Rajoman did clarify that, both for India and for the world's press. It was clarified here in the New York Times. Now, the coalition that came to power after that has failed. In many ways, there's a lot of backstabbing, and anyone who gets into power has to watch his own back while he may be seeing who else he can stab. So, like everywhere, almost. Unfortunately, like everywhere. Almost, but again, the Indians are extremely humorous people. They laugh at each other, and the last cartoon in the papers was Rajiv Gandhi holding onto a carpet. The Prime Minister had been sitting in his chair but had just left, and Rajiv Gandhi says, "Hey, that's cheating. You didn't allow me to pull the rug from under you." Well, that's good to have that kind of humor. So now there's an election, and Rajoman is standing from the city where his grandfather was born in Gujarat for the lower house.
And is that a more powerful house? Is it, or is it follows in the British tradition? It's like the House of Parliament?
A bit. It's a bit like Congress and the Senate. He's now, you would say, in the Senate. He's standing for the Congress or for Parliament, for the lower house.
If one were in the House of Commons as opposed to the House of Lords in Britain, more of the political power and actual fact is in Commons.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Is that the case in India as well?
And the case in India.
So he's becoming more influential.
He's moving to the more influential Parliament.
That wouldn't be the case if you went from the Senate to the House in our system. But in any event,
I see. So I've learned something.
Oh, no, we all learn all the time, right? But in any event, that he's trying to pick up in a certain sense, and he does in a very real sense. Very often, it's like you said, father and son, grandfather and grandson, and so forth. But he's trying to pick up the threads of that and keep true to that spirit, as it were, that was represented by Mahatma Gandhi, and perhaps make that spirit a living force here in the world as we begin to enact the force. It's difficult. Very often, great leaders are, well, just take Jesus or Buddha or any of the people who have not been able to be well emulated by the people who followed. It's difficult to do it. But he, in a sense, is attempting to bring some of that moral force to the political process in South Asia, no?
He definitely is, without a doubt, yeah.
And I suppose you'd share, Alan, the fact that if this could be done there, it could have an effect in terms of the world, because the same force that might transform the South Asia could be well applied towards transforming needfully the world.
It could be a very inspiring example. You know, many of in the grassroots in Africa, people are dissatisfied with the way their politics have gone, and in India, of course. And if they see someone who's got the heritage of Mahatma Gandhi and got the qualities and the eloquence come up, they may want him. You know? And that may be a transforming factor. And if it happens there, it could happen in Africa also. Democracy could start to take root in Africa more than it has done.
Well, I might just respectfully say it's not only in Africa, it's also in many parts of Latin America, it's also in many parts of Asia, it's in many parts of South America, and it's in many parts of North America that there is a sense, and an inchoate sense, of the need for some major transformation.
That's true.
It certainly is the case here in the United States. It's very hard to try and find expression for that often, because there's such an overwhelming weight of these traditional patterns and so forth. But it's something that is there, and probably that kind of a transformation, if we're talking about it, is one that would be morally motivated and perhaps would have to stand the slings and arrows of outrageous accusation that is being naive or something of that sort in its initial phases. But this is a force that can have real and meaningful and practical power in helping to shape the world and to free people from a sense of alienation and helplessness, as many people do feel in the developing as well as in some of the best people in the developed world or the advanced world as well. I wonder if we could, we're running a little bit short, if people want to be more involved with some of the, well, let's say the Frank Buckman's, he was also involved in helping to get the 12-step program and the Alcoholics Anonymous thing going?
Yes, he was. He was an American he was born in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and there are many offshoots of his work, and certainly the Alcoholics Anonymous was one of them.
And there's others now, Narcotics Anonymous and Fundamentalists Anonymous. There's people who are addicted to something can take this course toward trying to get themselves straightened out.
Yeah, and people involved in this kind of thing, I think they're in no way naive. They are getting to the root of what causes dissatisfaction, unhappiness, and ignorance.
Amen.
And suffering.
Amen. So that is true. I'm just saying the cynical overlay of so much of the modern world, and they seem to be so in. I was just talking to you earlier, I was researching the treatment of the American Indian peoples, and there was a poignant statement by one of the early North American Indian leaders that there are good men, there must be, among the white man, but there seems to be a preponderance of the bad because they seem to be in all the positions of power.
I think all do-gooders, if you might say, have been guilty of being naive. I'm grateful you're studying the plight of the Indian people and in academic terms. And I'm grateful that my son Alan has really studied academically these issues, because that is what the spirit, the the moral and spiritual needs, the gravitas of this kind of study,
Yes,
and mustn't be just caught up unknowingly in naivety.
Yeah, right.
This
But
study-
must we lose the ability to have an open heart, in a sense, which is often called that, if you understand, by the hard-hearted, as it were,
Yes.
who would establish their pattern and understanding of human nature and the whole biological and evolutionary and spiritual process of the universe in terms of a view of the world that is in itself, very, very disquieting,
Yes.
and perhaps even suicidal if we were to continue along these lines.
The open and spontaneous heart is
Yes.
definitely a quality.
A source of truth, and that truth can, in a certain sense, lead to, let's hopefully, lead to just and appropriate power relationships among
Yes,
the
and
peoples
that's
of the world,
why, in a
with
way,
justice.
we're here I'm glad to be here in the States, because this quality has been a great quality of the American people: spontaneousness, open-heartedness, and generosity.
Well, we have a great many problems here within the United States, if I may say so. I mean, with all due respect, and one other thing that I would say is that, in a certain sense, the film and the media, that is the film, the expression of the media, and the being able to have an influence and letting people be able to have an influence, while it is an important part of trying to bring about what is sometimes called consciousness raising. Perhaps it isn't immediate power in the sense of the presidency or the White House or the Senate or something like that, but it has a great role. The media has a great role in shaping national, international consciousness. And for that reason, I think the film that you've done contributes mightily toward helps trying to bring about a more appropriately organized world. And what we want to do is let the people in the audience know, if they want to have more information about the film or more information about your general activity, there is a place in New York where they could write and so forth. Maybe give them that here at the end.
There is indeed, and if you could write
Yeah,
it
we'll
up,
put it up, yes.
that would be good, yeah.
Yeah, and where would that be? You want to? All right, we can put that up. There's an address and a phone number in New
There's
York.
address and phone number in New York.
For people who want to have follow-up contact with this film and with the activities that you've been involved with. Huh?
That's right.
Okay, well, listen, we could go on talking at great length, but I'm afraid we've run out of time, unfortunately. So I just want to thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
And
Harry.
to remind you and in the audience that it's been your pleasure to have the perception, if I may, on my immediate left, Dr. Alan Channer, who has been a script consultant and a co-producer of this very handsome film, Rajoman Ganhdji, and on my far left, David Channer, a long friend of Rajoman and a person who knows India from a long and intimate time there, and the cinematographer and producer of the film. Congratulations to you both on the film and on all your work.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank you, and we'd like to invite you to tune in again next week. We on Conversations will be coming back again next week. That's it for this particular program. And Channers, thank you very, very much for coming in. It's been a great pleasure talking with you. Good night. We'll see you next week.